Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. It's a DFS review video for the 2021 Open Championship. Now in this video, I'm going to be covering a recap of the Open Championship as well as the Barbasol Championship. That'll be at the end of the video. You can always check the timestamps below. But I'll be also looking at the Millie Maker lineup, comparing it against the optimal lineup to see, could we make a lineup that was better than the Millie Maker and see if we could get to the optimal lineup. We'll take a look there, and then I'll look at the bucket system and the whole week-long process to see how well we did this week with the whole process and where we could improve. Timestamps can be found in the description below. They can also be found on YouTube's progress bar. All you gotta do is hover over it and you'll find timestamps there. Let's go ahead and jump into this thing and start with a recap. So, Collin Morikawa is your winner. He's 24 years old and now has his second major under his belt. They run parallels between him and Tiger all the time. He and Tiger are the only guys to win both the Open as well as the PGA Championship before the age of 25. But when it comes to consistency and just iron play, you could, I don't want to make that comparison like, oh, he's the next Tiger, but the level of their game is very similar. Now, Tiger was above and beyond at his time. No one was going to get close to him. I dare to say no one's going to get close to Morikawa in his iron game. Because if he's on a level ground in the fairway, no one over a long period of time, so like just averages, no one's going to get it closer to him on average. Morikawa is just solid tee to green. Putting, obviously, he has his issues, but he's giving himself enough birdie looks where you don't have to worry that much about his putting. He's he's rarely going to shoot over par rounds. He's going to be grinding out as many pars as he possibly can. It just really depends on where the pins are tucked and whether or not he's going to be aggressive and go for them. In Sunday's round, he played a really smart golf where he missed in all the locations he needed to miss. It didn't look sexy. His proximity stats weren't all that great, but he never really got himself into trouble. And I think he was bogey free on Sunday. Didn't make a single bogey. Ends up winning this tournament by 2 shots over Jordan Spieth. So if we want to say like Collin Morikawa is your new all-around golfer, he might be the guy everyone chases, although I have a disagreement there with Rom. But whereas Morikawa is cool, calm, and collected, Spieth is not. If you didn't watch Saturday, one of his, I can't remember if it was the third to last hole or second to last hole, he had a 1-foot putt. He just goes up, lackadaisically just hits it because he's disappointed he missed the putt prior and misses. Like, how do you miss a 1-foot putt? It really, honestly, if you are an elite golfer, how do you miss a 1-foot putt? Now, we saw JT do it on the Friday round, or maybe it was Saturday as well, where he also went up and just tapped it. You can't do this. Like, why are we seeing this from Spieth and Justin Thomas? I get you're frustrated, but, every putt counts. And on Saturday, when Spieth did that, he followed up and bogeyed the next hole. Again, because he was whiny. He had that negative, whiny energy. He ended up bogeying that hole. Those 2 shots probably were the difference here. And he even said it in his post-round interview on Sunday, after the tournament was over, said that he had wished he would have taken those shots a little bit more seriously. That way he could play in the final group and have, he feels like he's in control in the final group. You know what's going on around you. Everyone's in front of you. So if you fall behind, you know where you need to be, that kind of stuff. Yeah, no kidding. Like, it shouldn't have taken, let's put it this way. It didn't take him this long. He already knew that information. But how do you forget that on Saturday? It's super disappointing. Now, he finished second, looks good. But that second place finish, this sport will forever be compared. Like, if you are one of the best golfers in the game, you will always be compared to how many major championships you win versus other golfers around you. Morikawa now has a second, and it's very hard to imagine him not winning more because the guy is level-headed. He's cool, calm, collected. He sees everything as I think we all wish we could. I don't want to keep, bad talking Spieth, but honestly, that negative crybaby energy is the worst thing for him. Maybe that propelled him for this Sunday, having a good round of golf, but I don't know. I'm not like, there's no sour grapes here with Jordan Spieth. I did own a lot in my DraftKings lineups, and I wasn't in contention, to win a GPP or anything like that. So I'm not that concerned. It's just, you're trying to be an elite golfer. You should do your best, take every shot seriously, and Spieth just didn't. I'm gonna get off of Spieth, but yeah, super disappointing. But Morikawa beats him by 2. He beats Rahm and Oosthuizen by 4. Now Oosthuizen was coming into Sunday's round with a 1-shot lead over Morikawa. Oosthuizen shoots a 71, Morikawa shoots a 66. The 5-shot swing obviously puts Morikawa 4 shots ahead of him. Rahm shot a 66 also on Sunday and catapulted himself into a top 3 finish. Rahm had a really bad Thursday round. I shouldn't say bad. He shot 1 over, but it was very disappointing. It was lackluster. Let's put it that way. And he finished the rest of the tournament really well. He might have, I don't know who played better than him Friday through Sunday. Could have been Morikawa. Actually, they tied. Morikawa and Rahm tied, I think, probably having the best Friday through Sunday rounds. I'm not going to do, I'm just kind of briefly looking here. But either way, Rahm, his ascendance to number 1 in the world and really just getting to that top level. Look, no one is ever going to, we're never going to have another Tiger Woods. But Rahm, I think, is the top dog right now. Despite Morikawa just winning this, Rahm, I think, can win anywhere. Whereas Morikawa, I think it might be more situational. But I feel confident in Morikawa making more cuts than Rahm. But I'm more confident in Rahm having more winning opportunities than Morikawa. I don't know how firmly I believe in that, but it just... Rahm is to me, I feel like Rahm's on top of the world a little bit when it comes to the golf world. Morikawa, you can make a really good argument to say Morikawa is. It'll be fun. I think between those two guys, it'll be fun. Morikawa is more technical. Rahm is definitely a more feel player. It's fun seeing the contrast between those two. But either way, yeah, Rahm has a good Sunday. Oosthuizen does not. This marks another tournament, another major, a second one in a row where he finishes. He starts strong, but finishes kind of poorly. Top 3 finish, can't take that away from Oosthuizen. He was $9,300 on DraftKings, so that was a good value. And the rest of the guys, like Dylan Fratelli, was kind of a surprise, as was Mackenzie Hughes and Robert McIntyre. Maybe to some of you guys it isn't, but to me, those guys, look, they're capable. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely capable. But Fratelli, to me, super huge surprise. He didn't play terrible at the John Deere Classic the week before, but, I mean, I didn't anticipate seeing him at the top of the leaderboard. Mackenzie Hughes, I could, he's a good grinded out golfer, and usually the Open is one of those tests where you need to grind out as many pars as possible. I could see Mackenzie Hughes doing all right. Robert McIntyre also, he's a Scottish golfer. He's been playing well on some of these big events, so I also can see it. But at the same sense, I probably would have anticipated seeing other golfers, inside the top 10 as opposed to them. Not going to take anything away from him. Just interesting, a nice surprise. Then we have Koepka, Dustin Johnson, Scotty Scheffler, and Daniel Berger. Those are golfers that I anticipate seeing inside the top 10. DJ, your number 1 golfer in the world. I don't know if he retained his number 1 status. It might have went to Rahm, but maybe not. And then Brooks, another good finish at a major. If you did play him, you probably did well. But that's all I'm going to have for a recap here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Millie Maker lineup, which I don't know if I actually, yes, I do have up. So excuse me, I have all of the PGA events as well as the European events up here. I'm going to go ahead and hide some of this. I'm going to hide everything except for the quote-unquote last week stats. So John Deere Classic and Scottish Open were played the week before the Open. I'm going to go ahead and hide all of these so we can take a look. Little easier look to see the optimal lineup, the Millie Maker lineup, and the realistic optimal, which I'll explain a little bit later. Your Millie Maker lineup are all the golfers here highlighted in blue. So we have Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Louis Oosthuizen, Daniel Berger, Corey Connors, and Brian Harman. Now, 4 of the golfers inside the top 10, the other 2 inside the top 20. So all 6 were inside the top 20. Usually I can already tell that the optimal lineup is going to beat this, where I shouldn't say that. The Millie Maker lineup was not the winning lineup was not the optimal lineup. But those 6 golfers made up $49,800 and scored 578.5 points. That's pretty good. The optimal lineup consisted of Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Louis Oosthuizen, Dylan Fratelli, Mackenzie Hughes, and Brian Harman. So that Millie Maker lineup had 4 of the optimal lineup golfers, including Brian Harman, who finished 19th. But the difference between that was 592 versus 578. Pretty darn close. I have to give credit where credit's due. That Millie Maker lineup was really good. 24 points, essentially. 23 and a half. So that was super good. Now, if you followed me, I always tell you guys, make lineups that are greater than 49,000. It eliminates the amount of permutations that you can create on lineups. And basically what that is you have this 156 player field. If you leave more money on the table, you're inviting more combinations of lineups that can be made. So if you're using an optimizer or anything like that, your pool can be infinitely large. Oh, not infinitely, but it can be much larger if you leave more money on the table. Now, if you take some money, or I shouldn't say take some money. Let's say we go 49,000 greater or even 49.5 and greater. I always go 49.4 and greater. I've been playing around with it, but I always want greater than 49 at least. So that's what I consider a realistic optimal lineup, because why handicap yourself, in providing more possibilities of lineups? Let's try to narrow it a little bit more and not leave as much money on the table. Like, don't worry about how much money you leave on the table. Obviously, the Millie Maker winning lineup left 200. And if we go back in time, we're going to see it's always around 50,000 that wins the GPP. So don't worry about it. The realistic optimal lineup are all the golfers that I have highlighted in green. Now, for me, the rules here are all 6 golfers need to be inside the top 10, because that's how the bucket system works. And it needs to be 49,000 or greater. There's been one instance where we couldn't do that. We had to grab someone who was in 11th place. Still close enough, but no cigar. In this case, it worked out. So we had Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Louis Oosthuizen, Dylan Fratelli, Mackenzie Hughes, and Scotty Scheffler. That made up 49,600, or we used 49,600 of the salary. It scored 584 points. So it was 8 points behind the optimal lineup, and 5.5 points greater than the Millie Maker lineup. So yeah, we definitely could have created this lineup. It would have consisted of 3 9K golfers. Actually, all of the lineups consist of 3 9K golfers, which I think we have seen here at the Open before. And it's just a combination of different 6K golfers, 7K golfers, and in the realistic optimal lineup, we needed 1 8K, no 7Ks actually, and then 2 6Ks. The optimal, you needed a 6, 2 6s, and a 7. And then the Millie Maker winning lineup had 3 7s and 3 9s. So you could have gotten there, different ways to win the Millie Maker. But for me, it's the realistic optimal lineup. That's the way I would look at it. And I actually kind of forgot. Oh, no, I didn't do it. I added all of that to the DK page. So we'll be looking at this and trying to figure out if we can do this. We'll look at that with the bucket system. But that is going to be the conclusion of the Millie Maker lineup versus the optimal. So we definitely could have beat that Millie Maker lineup following some of the bucket system rules. And we'll get to that a little bit later. What I want to start with If you're with me in the strategy video, it wasn't just me. It was me and Mr. Guru Nick. We did our own rankings over here. So very first thing I like to do is just see how our rankings looked, or usually how my rankings look. So I'll sort it top to bottom. And what I want to see here is more top 20s than missed cuts. The missed cuts are those 85s, the dark reds. And then your top 20s are the light greens. Obviously, I have 3 missed cuts and a ton of light greens. Here's my 20th ranked golfer. So if I scroll up, you can't see him on the screen if I scroll all the way to the top. But I have 1 there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 golfers inside the top 20 and 3 missing the cut. So SweetSpot Ranks look really good. Let's see what Mr. Guru Nick had. Again, you want to see more top 20s than missed cuts. So sorry, the scroll isn't working right now. There you go. His 20th golfer was Tyrrell Hatton, who missed the cut. He had 4 missed cuts, it looks like. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we both had 10 top 20 golfers. I think I counted that right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So yeah, we both had 10 top 20s. He had 1 more missed cut. So I'm going to take the victory here, Nick, for obvious reasons. But either way, very good rankings between the two of us. And using these rankings, I like to then look at tee time pairings. So let's go ahead. And if you recall, I always go through these marquee tee time pairings I call anchor tee times. We used Nick's rankings because all of my marquee lineups were included with his, but then there were 2 more created with his rankings. And obviously how or what that consists of, again, if you were with us in the strategy video, you knew what that meant. I look at each pairing, and if their collective rank is less than 100, I highlight them dark green. So you can see, looking at Paul Casey, Abraham Ancer, and Ian Poulter, when we add all of those, the 3 rankings up, it equals 68. So it becomes this dark green. Whereas if I highlight this Victor Hovland, Ryan Palmer, and Thomas Detry lineup, that equals 153. So anything less than 200 is the light green. Anything less than 100 is dark green. So with this then, obviously, I would filter out by color. Take a look at this, and obviously you can see the games here. I'm just going to highlight every 3 games. This is our pairings. These are all of the marquee pairings. There are a lot. I think we had 9, if I remember correctly. And basically what we want to see is optimal lineup golfers in this, as well as top 20s or top 10s. Now, what I've noticed going back in time, every time I've done this, which I think I started either just after the PGA Championship or at the PGA Championship. I can't remember where it was, but I've been doing this for nearly 8-9 weeks. Every single time, I've found the majority of tee time pairings produce a top 20 golfer. And what I mean is, so this first tee time pairing, game 8, it produced a top 20, Paul Casey. Also with all of this, every time that I've done this, I've also found that there are 2 optimal golfers that you can find. Now, there are 9 marquee groups. That's too many. But you could have really created lineups around a lot of these guys. You could have Paul Casey in there for 8,600. Now, 15th place isn't that great, but if it was a cash lineup, that would be super good. Brooks Koepka finished 6th. Jordan Spieth is one of our optimal lineup golfers. John Rahm finished 3rd. Louis Oosthuizen was another optimal lineup golfer. And then Shane Lowry was a 12th place finisher, another top 20. So our top 4 groups all produce top 10s, and we also have, or I shouldn't say top 10s, top 20s, but we also have 2 of our optimal lineup golfers there. If I scroll down, we have Dustin Johnson in the next group with, Justin Rose, Will Zalatoris. Zalatoris withdrew, but there we go with Dustin with the top 10. And then we get into some of our other groups, and unfortunately, it is Nick's group, where I wouldn't have highlighted this group because of my ratings for Ryan Fox. There are no top 10s, top 20s there, but his second group did, Robert McIntyre. So we talked about McIntyre being on the Oh, was he actually? Never mind. Oh, I was just going who I was surprised by. I was like, is he part of one of the optimal lineups? No. But he finishes top 10. So there was another group inside these marquee groups where we have a top 10 finisher. And then the last two groups did not, which is disappointing. Justin Thomas, Adam Scott, Tommy Fleetwood. We would have anticipated that we'd had top 10 there. Reed, McIlroy, and Cameron Smith. Again, we would have there as well. Unfortunate, Patrick Reed missed the cut by a stroke, I believe. Which was disappointing. He had a putt, I think, just crawl inches short of making the cut, I believe. I could be wrong. Anyways, marquee tee times, another success. 2 optimal lineup golfers, a bunch of top 10s, top 20s. So, like, if we were to do this again, I think Guru Nick and I, we talked about this. You know, if you're hedging against Xander, you could play either of these golfers. And really, if you fell on McIntyre, 7,300, that was great value. He wasn't owned. Actually, he was. Never mind. He was 10% owned in the Millie Maker lineup, or in the Millie Maker contest. But either way, great value there. Could have went that route if you didn't like Xander, or if you wanted to get off what everyone else was kind of jumping on. But yeah, the marquee tee times, I'm going to continue going on. This is definitely going to become a staple. It kind of already has, but just seeing the results. Sometimes we only have 4 groups we talk about, and in those 4 groups, we see 2 optimal lineup golfers. When we only look at 4, obviously do our math, 4 times 3 is 12 golfers we have to select from. That's pretty good. Even if there's 6 groups, we just need to pick 2. Pick your combination of 2 golfers. If you feel a little risky, you know, hammer down on some of the golfers that you like. But either way, I do like this. One interesting note, I think there's a group, I think it was Morikawa in it, where there's like 3 top 10s. There we go. It was not Morikawa's group. Brian Harman, Mackenzie Hughes, and Dylan Fratelli. Now, their ranks didn't... Yeah, neither of their ranks were under 200, so I didn't highlight them. This would probably be, you know... I mean, this also highlights the volatility of golf, but perhaps our rankings didn't include something... or include a couple things where these golfers' rankings should have been better. But seeing these 3 golfers and how well they scored, the reason I look at tee time pairings is because golfers draft off each other. If someone's playing well, the likelihood of the other 2 golfers playing well is high. It's higher than usual. The same thing on the opposite side occurs. If someone's playing poorly, he might bring the other 2 golfers down. This is just kind of the... I don't even know what you want to call it. The rhythm of golfing in a group. A lot of times it sparks competition. Sometimes it just sparks good feelings, good vibes, if you want to call it that. On the other side, it creates bad vibes. It creates a negative energy around you. And seeing golfers play poorly, it's difficult to get your rhythm going because they're usually acting on it. Like, imagine playing with Jordan Spieth or Bubba Watson. Like, we all know no one really enjoys playing with Bubba Watson. I shouldn't say no one as a definitive, but like, Bubba Watson's hard to play with. And a lot of it's because of his, I wouldn't call him temper tantrums or anything like that, but how he acts on the golf course. Same thing applies with Jordan Spieth. It's hard to play with Jordan Spieth because of kind of the whiny mentality he gets into. But either way, Brian Harman, Mackenzie Hughes, Dylan Fratelli, maybe, perhaps. I mean, they all had really good Thursday rounds. They shot in the 60s. And their Fridays weren't terrible either. I mean, Dylan Fratelli shot better than the other 2, but they stayed around par. One shot one better than par, one shot one worse than par, and then one guy shot 3 shots better than par. Yeah, they all played really well. And perhaps maybe it was the group. Now, the same thing could be applied to the Rahm, Oosthuizen, Shane Lowry group. We already discussed that one. But there was 3 golfers there that played really well together. One group we didn't talk about was Scheffler, Sergio, and Yuxin Lin. Scheffler and Garcia played well. They actually had really good Thursday and Friday rounds together. So maybe they propelled themselves forward. Whereas Yuxin, I think he's an amateur golfer, so maybe he just doesn't play well because his skill isn't there. But perhaps the other 2 kind of boosted his performance. Either way, there's another group. And then I don't think I have any other ones to talk about. Never mind. Morikawa, your winner. Corey Connors, Sebastian Munoz. Both Nick and I mean, my collective score was 136. Nick's was 176. Sebastian Munoz, for whatever reason, both of us, we weren't that high on him. If his ranking was a little lower, and I guess Corey Connors was a little lower, we would have been talking about this group. It would have been one of our marquee groups, but unfortunately we did not. And that's just how it goes sometimes. But for the most part, I liked the marquee groups. It would be interesting to try to figure some other kind of scoring model that would have gotten, all of our top 20s into the marquee groups, but it's just not going to happen. All in all, I think it was great. I think it was like 6 out of 9 groups had a top 20 finisher or a top 10 finisher. 7 of 9 groups had a top 20 finisher. So that's super good. Let's go ahead and move on. Anchor buckets were the next ones we're talking about, or that I was going to talk about. Go ahead and put a filter on this. Now, the way to talk about anchor buckets, first of all, we're not going to talk about last week buckets or last year buckets because obviously there wasn't a tournament played last year. Therefore, I have nothing to talk about when it comes to last year buckets. However, when it comes to anchor buckets, buckets we want to revolve our lineups around, one of them was a last week one. I did not play. And this is where I want to review the bucket system, how well it did. We'll look at all the last weeks and see how many we have. We want to find top 10 finishers. So let's go ahead. Just look at the top 10. And last week ones. We want one. At least one. And obviously we have one with Jordan Spieth. But we have one with Louis. We have one with Brooks. We have one with Dustin Johnson and Mackenzie Hughes. Let's do this a different way. So we had 5 total. Now, I always we want a minimum of 1, but we've seen a max of 4. So we could play up to 4 of these guys. Inside the top 10, we wanted a minimum of 3. So we could go several different routes. I always make sure I play 1. 1 is my bare minimum because of the top 5 frequencies. Every single year we've seen at least one top 5 finisher out of this. They're going to be in the optimal lineup no matter what. So like when we look at the 2021, Jordan Spieth is in your optimal, but so is Louis Oosthuizen and so is Mackenzie Hughes. So we have 3 golfers right there. This works well with the 3 minimum top 10 finishers. So right away, if we followed this and selected 3 golfers, there's a chance we get there with Jordan, Louis, and Mackenzie Hughes. Recent form 1, that's another one. Again, minimum 1, max 4. But when it comes to top 10, we had 2 and 6. So let's take a look at our recent form 1s. Do we see any of them inside the top 10? Sure we do. Colin Morikawa, one way to get there. But we have Rahm, Oosthuizen, Koepka, Berger, and Scheffler. So we have 6 that we get to choose from. Again, when we look at the summary, we want to select 2. And I apologize. Last week ones were golfers who did not play last week. Recent form 1s were golfers who have an average finishing position over the last 7 weeks in between 20 and 40. And that includes the European events too. So when we take a look, that was obviously Morikawa, Rahm, Oosthuizen, Koepka, Berger, and Scheffler. We only want to select 2 golfers though. That's what shows, well, I shouldn't say we want to select 2. We want to select at least 2 for top 10 finishers. When it comes to optimals, we have Morikawa. He hit it. As did Louis Oosthuizen. Those are the only 2 guys that were in the optimal under this bucket. So it's nice to see Rahm. It's nice to see Koepka, also Berger and Scheffler. Now, Scheffler was in the realistic optimal lineup, but he wouldn't have been in the actual optimal lineup. So therefore, again, if we follow those rules, if we selected at least 2 of those guys, maybe we get on Morikawa. Obviously that helps with trying to get Louis Oosthuizen, because he was also a last week one. Again, that helps too. Perhaps we should just pick Louis based off of buckets. That's crazy. But, okay, so I don't look at salaries or strokes gained. I don't think there's enough data to normalize those stats. Currently, I think it's 3 years worth of data. Whenever I do this analysis, at the end of a tournament, I never see the correct I never see these buckets perform how I anticipate them performing. So yeah, that's my take on it. Now the other bucket that I like, or the other buckets, these would be like the alternative anchor buckets, because these all have 0 top 5 frequencies, but they all have at least 1 top 10 frequency. So we can take a look here as well. Let's just stick with recent form, look at our recent form 2s, which is that 40 to 60 range. Can we find recent form 2s? We have 1, Mackenzie Hughes. So it applies, you know, not only was he the last week 1, but he's a recent form 2. Perhaps that's how we get to him. And we want a minimum of 1. Now there's a max of 4, but we want at least 1, and it worked out. Course history 2s, let's go there. We want a minimum of 1, max of 6, and these are your guys who have, really it's tournament history between, and it's your average finishing position between 20 and 40. So if they have an average finishing position at the Open Championship, somewhere between 20 and 40, that's where they would fall. And tournament history 2, there's 1, 2. So Spieth we would have got to. He would have been the optimal, but Brooks was not. But either way, Brooks would have been a good, you know, golfer to basically build your lineups around, because he is in 3 of these buckets that we've already mentioned. So super good there. Again, we only see 1, so that one worked. When we look at course history 1s, that's your 40 to 60 range. That's their average finishing position at this tournament. We want at least 1 there as well. So course history 1s, we have 1, 2, 3. So we have Spieth. I'm sorry, not Spieth. Rahm, Oosthuizen. So Oosthuizen, the optimal lineup, and Dustin Johnson. So again, that worked out as well. And our last one, course history 3s, that's your 60 to 80 range. We want at least 1 there as well. Do we get it? Course history 3, Dylan Fratelli, Daniel Berger. So that's how we get to Dylan Fratelli, is through the tournament history 3 bucket. That's it. Obviously his rank is not good. Usually I want to see the SweetSpot rank less than half of the max rank. So there's 156 golfers. That means there's 156 ranked golfers. Half of that's 78. I want all my golfers inside the top 10 to be 78 or better. Dylan Fratelli's not there. It's hard to play someone like a Dylan Fratelli when his rank is that bad, but this is how the bucket system gets to some of these golfers. Fratelli could easily, well, I should say easily, but he is a tournament history bucket 3 golfer, the only one inside the top 10. Therefore, we probably should have played someone like that. So to wrap up the buckets here, it all worked out. All of our anchor buckets hit. They all finished inside the top 10, and with each one of them, we can find an optimal lineup golfer, or a golfer that was in the optimal lineup. One of the things I've been toying around with is strength of field. So when we look at, you know, the rest of the buckets, I wish I actually had kind of a performance thing to show you what this year provided. But when we look at like last week buckets, 50% of the strength of field went towards your last week 1s. Obviously that hit, and actually 3 of them hit. Now last week 2 would be another one we talked about, and then 20% hit there, and we actually had that one hit as well. So 73% of the strength of field went into these 2 buckets. That's probably a good indication that we're going to see those golfers inside the top 10. Do we have last week 4, 5, 6, or 3? Morikawa was a 6. Fratelli was a 3. Berger was a 4. So we only have 3 golfers outside of buckets 1 and 2. And I believe that's probably because of the strength of field wasn't that great in those buckets. Now, if we take a look at course history buckets, again, we're not looking at last year buckets. Most of our bulk here, so we have basically 60% going to course history 2 and 1. Obviously, we talked about that being in our anchor buckets. You can see most of the tournament history buckets. Course history, tournament history, same thing. Most of them are 1s and 2s. Now, we do have 2 5s and a 4, or 3 5s and a 4. So let's take a look at who was in the 5s. 18%, wow, of our strength of field is there. So that's probably a really good indication, once again, why they would show up. And we did have 1 in the 3. Did we have any in the 4 or 6? I think, was Morikawa a 6? No, we didn't have 6. we have 1-4. And that's it. And that was Robert McIntyre. So when it came to these tournament history buckets, that was super good. Yeah, 2.28% went towards the strength of field out of that bucket. So obviously not a bucket we really want to focus that much on, but you know, that's how you probably get to Robert McIntyre. He wasn't in the optimal lineup, so we don't have to actually talk about that. Now, recent form buckets, again, let's take a look at the strength of field. Two of these buckets, once again, that's 40, that's 30, it's almost 70% go towards recent form 1s and 2s. So if we take a look at recent form, we have 1, 2, 3. Actually, let's look at the ones that aren't a part of that. So it's 3, 4, 3. Only 3 golfers were outside those buckets. I think we're finding something with these buckets, looking at strength of field. So how many were 3s? We had 2 that were 3s. Well, 18% went towards strength of field. And then our last one was what? A 4? And that's 12% or 11% goes towards. We see nobody here. I mean, we're only really getting rid of how many were in there we're only getting rid of 32 golfers that made this up. But either way, this gives us a good idea of what buckets are actually really important this week because of the strength of field that goes towards them. One of those things I want to see in the future when I go over the strength of field is when there's like, say, 5 golfers. So when we look at these salaries, when there's only 5 golfers in it, what if this strength of field percentage is super high? I would love to see, that bucket finish inside the top 10 for that tournament. Obviously, I'm using salaries. That's really easy. 5 golfers are 10K and above. Obviously, we did have one of those in Brooks, but we also had it in DJ as well as Rahm. So 3 of our golfers. And when we take a look, that's nearly 18% of the strength of field going towards that. And you can see how that's broken down by salaries. 18%. Well, it's your 3rd greatest bucket when it comes to percentage of strength of field. Your first is the 7K. I don't know how many 7K golfers we actually had. 1, 2, just 2. Super interesting. But that bucket also consisted of 40 golfers, whereas the 10K only had 5. And when you look at the 9K, we only had 7. That also made 18%. And we can see a lot of 9K golfers. Well, 3 of them to be exact, inside the top 10. So I think we're onto something. When it comes to strength of field, I think that's what we want to be looking at when it comes to these buckets, especially the anchor buckets. The other thing I want to see is when we do have an actual top 5 frequency, if the percentage of strength of field is like less than 5% and that bucket fails for that week, I want to see that, because then that way we know the representation within that bucket wasn't good. And that's, the reason probably why that bucket failed. On the flip side, if we do have a weak strength of field in that bucket and it still succeeds, then we know this particular finish the week before is definitely something we need to be looking at. So all in all, the bucket system did well. I usually like to conclude looking at, a tournament with the top 20 of every stat in this field, just so you can see. And this has a lot to do with when influencers in the DFS world tell you, hey, strokes gained something matters. You need this. That matters. Course history matters. Recent form matters. So let's go ahead. Why not take a look at all of... Let's see. I'm trying to make this not look as confusing. I can just do something like this. Sure, I'm going to hide this. Hopefully that's not that confusing to you guys. But anyways, let's go ahead. Let's take a look at, everything we can. We have no last year stat. I had no grass stats. So let's look at tournament history. Did tournament history matter here? Doesn't look like it. So this is top to bottom, all your top tournament history golfers. McIntyre already had his 6th place finish. We already know that's just one finish. He ended up going 8th. And then Tony Finau with the 14, he's just making he's continuing his streak of having really good finishes at the Open Championship. Erik van Rooyen, obviously we can kind of, he's not the greatest of golfers. He applies 2 points towards the strength of field. He's ranked 96th in the world, so maybe that has a lot to do with it. Anyways, he wasn't coming into this with really great form anyways. So tournament history didn't really matter there. Jordan Spieth, he's the only guy inside the top 20. So the golfer that I highlighted that you can't see on screen, this is your top 20 right here. Brooks Koepka, he finished 6th. So we have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 guys inside the top 20. 1, 2, 3 inside the top 10. Pretty good, but a lot of missed cuts. So if we're looking just strictly at tournament history, not the greatest. We already went over last week's stats when it came to, and honestly, we kind of already went through like tournament history. Didn't really necessarily need to care about that. Last week, finishing inside the top 10 or top 20, did that even matter? No, we shouldn't even look at this. Not a big deal. Recent form, did recent form matter? Obviously, we looked at our buckets. Wow. So your top 20 with recent form, top 22, top 25. Yeah, your top 25. We can go a little bit further down. But Lowry, Brooks, Scheffler, McIntyre, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 golfers inside the top 10. Inside your top 25 for the stat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 guys inside the top 20 at this tournament who are inside the top 25 for recent form. So recent form, definitely a stat that matters. We do have 3 missed cuts, so that has to, 4 missed cuts. I don't think we're really playing Guido, but either way, got to keep that into account. But most of your top golfers that you probably want to, pick to anchor your lineups around, recent form is definitely a good stat, at least for this year it was. Looking at your top off the tee golfers, again, we're looking at our positions here. Now, this is an Open Championship. Off the tee stats didn't really matter. They look at driving distance, but when you have a positive off the tee, you're either hitting the ball far enough and maybe finding the rough, or you're hitting enough fairways where your off the tee stats are great. When we're looking at something like this, again, we have 4 missed cuts. Here's our top 20 guy. Colin Morikawa, actually, he is our 20th golfer when we look at this. So he won. And then he's inside the top 10. DJ's inside, Scheffler, Brooks, and Rahm. So we had 5 guys inside the top 10. We had 3 more for the top 20. So 8 top 20, 5 top 10, 4 missed cuts. So off the tee was definitely a good stat to go by. How about approach? We already know Colin Morikawa is your top guy. He won. Looking at his approach stats versus Paul Casey, that's ridiculous. Approach looks good. There are a few more missed cuts. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a withdraw 7. Versus 1, 2. Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 top 10s, 6, 7, 8, 9 top 20s. So approach was another good stat to go by, but we had a few more missed cuts there. So not the actual one you want to, I shouldn't say actual one, hard one to stick by. Around the green stats, that looked good. We have 4 of our optimal lineup golfers with really good around the green stats. That's something to look at. 2 approach guys. I forgot to look at our optimals. 2 approach guys. And one off the tee, we just have 1. So now we look at this in a different light. Around the green looks pretty good. How about putting? We obviously know Morikawa isn't going to be up there, but we have 3 guys here: Oosthuizen, Harman, Mackenzie Hughes. We can scroll down a little bit more and Spieth is there. So putting stats, not terrible. We have 3 missed cuts, not a lot of top 10s or top 20s, but that's not a terrible stat if we want to go by that. Now, one thing that I do, let me open this back up to everybody, is I do have a strokes gained bucket right here. Your strokes gained 1 indicate all stats are positive for off the tee, approach, putting, and around the green. So if we take a look, you can kind of see how that designates. So our first golfer here is Louis Oosthuizen. All 4 of his stats are positive. Then there's Jon Rahm. All 4 of his stats are positive. Brooks Koepka, Scottie Scheffler, Dustin Johnson, Those are all top 10 golfers that have all stats positive. Now, strokes gained 3, like Collin Morikawa, is positive off the tee, negative putting. But look at his approach stat, really good. Jordan Spieth, he's a strokes gained 4. That means he's negative off the tee, positive putting. Then we have Dylan Fratelli, another positive off the tee, negative putter. Mackenzie Hughes, negative off the tee, positive putter. So you can kind of see all the different types of stats, but inside this top 10, there really isn't anything we can, cling to. This is why the bucket system to me is really important. You need to know the different makeup of the optimal lineup of what you want to create. Now, don't get me wrong. You could definitely do an all positive approach, and find lineups that way. So if I highlight this, we could go with Grillo. He has positive stats. I don't know why I just did that, but we're looking at Grillo here. He has positive approach stat, 6,700, easy to build a lineup around him. Corey Connors, same thing applies, 0.742. He's obviously a positive approach, $7,100. That's easy to go by. A lot of these we can build lineups around. You could grab these 3 golfers that are up at the top, Morikawa, Spieth, Oosthuizen. Is that actually how the Millie Maker lineup did his lineups? Yeah, it is. All positive approach. That's how he built his lineups. You can do that and win a Millie Maker. Obviously, I'm always in pursuit of the optimal lineup. You're not building an optimal lineup this way. You need to include guys who have negative approach, positive putting or positive off the tee. That's how you build optimal lineups. Again, that's what I'm always curious to do, and what I'm trying to do. So let me hide this. We can go ahead and hide the strokes gained buckets once again. So we look at all of the miscellaneous stats. I'm just going to cruise through this. Did driving distance really matter here? Well, there's a lot of top 10s, top 20s versus missed cuts and withdraws. How about driving accuracy? Same thing applies. Good drive percentage. That mattered. Look at how many top 10s, top 20s there are. And there are some missed cuts too. Don't get me wrong. Green and reg, that was a good stat as well. Proximity, not so much. 1 putt percentage. No, not really. 5 to 10 feet. Not quite. 1 to 10 or 10 to 15 feet. Not quite. Bogey avoidance. Yeah, that was an okay stat. Not the greatest. How about birdie or better? Oh yeah, birdie or better is definitely a stat you wanted to go with. I thought I added more stats, but I think I did that afterwards. So next week we're going to have a few more stats to look at. But that's going to conclude the Open Championship. I didn't have a very solid week when it came to profiting off of DraftKings with the Open. My exposure levels are right here. You can see, I had 16% of Morikawa. I think that's good. When I look at the industry and this is your Millie Maker lineup ownership percentage. So in the Millie, I was overweight on Morikawa. I wasn't with Jordan Spieth, but I was pretty darn close. I was with Rahm, which is kind of funny. I was not with Oosthuizen. I only had 10%. Everyone had 20. Dylan Fratelli, I was I was overweight on, so I was positive there. I was overweight on Brooks. I was overweight on Mackenzie Hughes. I was not with Scheffler, but I was pretty darn close. Berger, I wasn't. A lot of people like Berger. I was with DJ. McIntyre, not so much. So I didn't do well there. And then you can kind of see, Victor Hovland, I was overweight a little bit on that one. So was Grillo. Was not with Shane Lowry or Tony Finau, which is fine. I'm okay with that. Right on par with the rest of the Millie Maker with Corey Connors. Paul Casey, 8%. I was lower, which obviously played well for me because he finished 15th. 0% Marcel Sim. Yeah. So either way, my ownership exposures were great. You just have to put the right golfers together. That's the big thing. So that was the downfall for me. Didn't do well there. Let's go ahead and move to the Barbasol. So I'm going to try to make this a little bit faster. The Open Championship obviously takes precedence because, it's the more important tournament. But here we go. Seamus Power wins, and he wins in a playoff against JT Poston. JT Poston was at 24 under at one point in time in this tournament. He makes a double at a par 5 because he hits one, I think, OB off the tee, has put another one down, and then basically makes par from there, which is highly disappointing because the par 5 wasn't very long. That double wasn't the killer, but the bogey, I think 2 holes later or the next hole later, was the big downfall. And then it was pars all the way in. So JT Poston kind of choked a little bit and allowed Seamus Power to tie him to go into a playoff. Now, it went into 6 holes. The playoff went to 6 holes, so JT definitely fought his way the best he could, but ultimately lost to Seamus Power. Seamus Power gets his first win. The guy's been running on such a crazy heater. He's had a lot of top 20 finishes over the last 7 weeks. I mean, a lot. It's like obviously 3 or 4. We'll look at this a little bit later, but yeah, Seamus Power playing really well. And you can see the rest of the top 10 here. Taylor Pendrith, by the way, keep an eye out for this kid. He's a Corn Ferry golfer, plays really well. I think he's Canadian. He's kind of their next big thing to come out of Canada. Taylor Pendrith, definitely a really good golfer. And then we have Mito Pereira, who it was like their darling a couple weeks ago. I can't remember what tournament it was. But finally, in this alternate event, he gets a top 10 finish, top 5 finish, actually, which is super good. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. So I'm going to do kind of the similar thing that I did. We'll look at an optimal lineup versus the winning lineup of the GPP I played, and I only played one lineup, and it was in the dime time. I just like to grab information. I like to grab data whenever I can. You had to play in an event to grab that information from DraftKings, so that's what I did. The dime time winning lineup used $49,800, and it was Seamus Power, Anirban Lahiri, Luke List, Ryan Armour, James Hahn, and in 53rd place, Scott Harrington. Used $49,800 again of the salary, scored 708 points. Now the optimal lineup, all the golfers inside the top 10: James Hahn, Mito Pereira, Anirban Lahiri, Sam Ryder, JT Poston, and Seamus Power. Those 6 golfers scored, I didn't put it down. Let's see. 763 points. So it scored nearly, 55 points greater than the GPP lineup. It used 49,600, so we don't even have to do a realistic optimal lineup here. Again, when we look at Seamus Power, look at all of the top 20s he had. He had 4 top 20s. This would be another top 20, but 4 top 20s leading into this. He's the only guy that had great or better than 20 as a recent form average. So obviously the average finishing position was 20 or less, and that's where Seamus Power landed. He's the only guy in the field with that type of recent form. Like if I go ahead and we sort by recent form, you're going to see he's better than the next guy by double his recent form. So again, it's your average finishing position over the last 7 weeks. It's half of the next guy in line, and that was Jim Herman, who also finished really well. So recent form looked pretty good here if you wanted to use that. I sort by DraftKings points. You can kind of see the rest of the golfers up here. Enough 10K golfers. So obviously DraftKings was doing something right when pricing these guys. But yeah, that's your optimal lineup versus the GPP winning lineup. There's definitely some space we could do. Now, I didn't go through a preview. I didn't do a strategy, which unfortunate. I mean, the Open Championship had a lot of data crunching I needed to do. So I'm not going to go through a lot of this, but you can see what I have as my rank. I did the same thing as I do for every tournament to figure out my rank. I look at all the scores, the stats that I go into. I actually used Grass Stats this time for this one. And again, we're trying to find more top 20s than missed cuts. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ryan Armour down here. 10 top 20s. 6 top 10s. And we compare that to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 missed cuts. So all in all, to me, that's a success, especially for an alternate field event like this, where there's not a lot of stats on some of these guys, especially the Corn Ferry guys coming up, or sponsor exemptions that have not played a PGA Tour event in forever. I think it's pretty good. If I were to go ahead and sort this again by result, I'll keep that here. We can go ahead and take a look to see if we have anything similar. Now, I was going to do strength of field. I didn't get around to it. By the way, strength of field for this event, 16. So, like, there wasn't a lot to even talk about. Your best golfer in the field that applied more points, more points than anyone in this event was Charles Schwartzel. So that means we had 15 golfers that applied points towards the strength of field. Schwartzel had 2, and we have some of these guys that have 1. In fact, I mean, I guess no, we couldn't have made a lineup with these guys, but you can see James Hahn is 1. He applied 1 point towards the official World Golf Ranking, $7,200. That's pretty good. Either way, so I didn't do strength of field, but if we were gonna do buckets, anchor buckets, we could look at this, see if we can find anything. So, top 5 frequencies. Okay, never mind. There we go. So take that away. We're only looking at last year 1s and course history 2s. Actually, no. We have a few. Last year 1s did not play last year. Let's take a look. Do we have any of those inside the top 10? Last week 1. There's 1, 2, 3. Here, let's get rid of some of these. Again, we're only looking at top 10s. We have 1, 2, 3. That's going to hit. We wanted to find at least 2 of those guys. We found 3. And for top 10, minimum of 4, we didn't hit that. So good thing we only look at top 5s when it comes to that. Oh, those are last year buckets. I'm sorry. Wrong. I messed that up. We want to look at course history 2s. Those are golfers who have never played this event before. We're looking for a minimum of 2. So course history 2s, 1, 2. So we have our 2, but technically he finished top 5, so that it worked out. Brilliant. Recent form 1s, that 40 to 60 range, we want at least 1 of those golfers. Recent form 1s, 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. That one hit. Recent form 2s, that's that 60 to 80 range. So over the last 7 weeks, the average 60 to 80 place. Not great by any means, but we want to find a golfer from here. 1 at least because of the top 5, maybe 2. Of course, recent form 2s. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we hit that one as well. So if we were doing anchor buckets here, we hit all the anchor buckets we needed to. Again, if we want to take out the minimums here for top 5s and then just look at our minimums for top 10s, we can take a look at a couple more. So last week 3s, we see a minimum of 1. Let's see if we have last week 3s. We don't. So that one did not hit. Again, I mean, strength of field can't be that great, for that bucket. So that one didn't do well. Last week 1s, we actually did look at last week 1s, and we did find 3. So 1, 2, 3. That one hit. And course history 1s, that 1 to 20, we usually see 1. Course history 1s, 1, 2. It was course history 1s, right? Yeah. So we have 2 inside the top 10 and really inside the top 5. So that worked out as well. Sorry, I'm skipping, going all over the place here. But that one worked out as well. So if we were looking at anchor buckets, all but 1 really didn't show up. So that's a success in my opinion. So if we were looking at buckets prior to this tournament, I would tell you which golfers you really want to highlight and focus around. You might have got on some of these guys. So next time I'll be better prepared. A lot of this I just created this week. So yeah, Barbasol tournament or Barbasol Championship wasn't one that I really went off of quite a bit, or I never looked at in the past. In fact, I don't even have another DK page, so I don't have any salaries that go with this. No strokes gained stats that go with this either. This is the first year that I've actually recorded it for this tournament. So yeah, as one could tell, I wasn't going to have any data for this. I'm not going to go through all the other stats, but I did record all of them. So everything, the extra stats like we just did during the Open. I'm not going to go over all of them. I'll let you guys pause the video at any point. I'm going to go through all the best stats for this, take a look, see if anything really pops. I'll stop if I see, 2021 Bentgrass stats, of course. That's what I've been finding out recently. That's what a stat we really want to go by. Recent form's not terrible. See off the tee stats, anything good there? Oh yeah, there you go. Bunch of top 20s there. Approach, around the green, that's not terrible. Putting, pretty good. Putting stats were definitely one to look at. Driving distance, not terrible. Driving accuracy, pretty good. So yeah, I mean, there was trouble off the tee, so that makes sense. Good drive percentages up there as well. Green and reg, that's not bad. Proximity, it's okay. Bogey avoidance, that one's okay as well. Birdie or better, that one's high as well. Here we go. Now I have the extra stats in here. So this is make percentage from 3 to 5 feet. That one's high. How about 5 to 10 feet? That one's high as well. 10 to 15? Not bad. One putt percentage. One putt percentage between 5 and 10 feet. One putt percentage between 10 and 15 feet. Wow, that's good. 3 optimal lineup golfers right there. So putting at this tournament it looks like that was really important. Putting and off the tee stats were definitely something to look at. So with that, that's all I have for you. That was pretty good. 2 tournaments we covered, all within an hour long. It's a victory in my book. So hopefully you guys did well. I think going forward, well, I'm going to wait till the FedEx playoffs before I announce anything. But I think I'm just going to go down to 1 video a week. That way I can spend more time working on the database, putting the website together, because with summer, I play in golf tournaments. I'm always busy. I don't have enough time to do everything. So I'm always putting these spreadsheets together, making these videos. There's just not enough time to do everything. So I think when we get to the FedEx Cup playoffs, I'm just going to do 1 video a week. That way I can focus on, the other things that I know once we get up and running are going to be a huge success. So I think we'll just wait till there. Otherwise, you can expect the normal 3 videos a week: review, preview, strategy, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So with that, hey, thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next preview video. All right, bye.